Yo, I'm Oli from Bring Me the Horizon,
I'm Brian from Knocked Loose.
and you're watching Two for the Road on Consequence. When we were looking for supports for this tour, not least one at First Names that came up, and we wasn't sure if like we kind of have this. I think we've been a bit burnt out from like when we started our band, like we were like quite derided and hated, like especially from like we grew up in like this hardcore metal scene, but we were always a bit kind of like hated or like respected, but it were like one or the other and stuff. So we were always kind of still so scarred from that. We're always like, oh, this band's not going to want to tour with us. So like we kind of, I think one of our friends who knows you guys quite well, he was like, oh no, they would definitely be interested in that tour if you asked them. So like, fuck it, we'll ask. And yeah,
Oh, he he actually mentioned that to me, and I was just like, man, tell them that we are not too cool. Like we would love it. So as soon as we heard about it, we had plans for the fall, and we were just like, move it around, like do whatever you got to do, because we wanted to make it work. So we were immediately excited about the idea. I know that we've all been fans for a really long time, and so I'm glad that it ended up working out. We're at the point now where this is our second bus tour ever, which is like still very new for us. So it's kind of just like a whole new like refreshing way to tour. It kind of helps us from getting burnt out, and beyond that, you become a little bit more pampered with the things that a bus can provide. And for me specifically, we have a kettle on the bus, and I've turned into like I'll have a hot tea every day. So like during like whoever plays before us, I'll get me a tea ready, and then I'll kind of just like relax and have a tea. And I feel like that's really helped me. It's turned into this like whole ritual, whereas before I didn't do anything. I just kind of like jumped on stage. But now I got to stretch or I'll feel it for a week. And
yeah,
yeah,
I feel that kind of the same, to be honest. I mean, we were actually like laughing about how mental it is. Like when our band started, there was absolutely no kind of ritual, no warm ups. They were just screaming, and we drank so much, just took drugs from any old strangers. Just there was absolutely no. And now it's just like now we're like on a tour bus. We have a little humidifier in the hallway, and if there's not any in it, we're like, oh god, we're gonna get dry. We're gonna get a dry throat. It's like warming up every day and being super like if my voice just starts to feel a little sore, I'm like, right, I can't talk now for a whole day. It's just like it's black and white. But I mean, yeah, I guess as you do it more and more, you realize like, well, the show's the most important thing, and I really want to get up on stage every night and the show to be sick. So I have to compromise for that a little. So yeah, it's quite depressing, like how boring
yeah,
we are now as like a touring band compared to like 10 years ago. I mean, we are old, a lot older now, so it makes sense. But yeah, it's I think people would be quite surprised if they came
yeah,
backstage, but like what they imagine like rock bands doing backstage, and you come in, it's just all sat on a laptop, so
yeah.
playing PlayStation and just yeah, it's pretty
Video
boring.
games is huge. Like now being able to be on a bus, we like bring a PlayStation because there's somewhere safe for it to live. And I know you guys have a pretty sick rig
Yeah,
for
yeah,
video games, and we had one yesterday at the venue, and I was like, this is crazy.
yeah,
I'm just like eating catering and playing video games all
yeah.
day. It's like not what people think touring is at all.
Yeah. They're obsessed with FIFA. The rest of my bands, all the other guys love football, so they just honestly they play FIFA. I don't even get a look in anymore. I love video games, but I'm kind of just like they're just on it so much that I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna say I'm more into like story-based games or like longer games, so it's not really that great for tour anyway. So I'm just like, I'll play them at Christmas. So I've just kind of been taking a little bit PlayStation detox, but yeah, the guys are just playing FIFA all day every day.
I'm the same way. I like story mode games a lot, and it's hard to play it on tour. So we just play like Fortnite or like Skater XL, like something that's easy to just like pass around.
Yeah, yeah, they're the best ones for tour.
Yeah. Something that I do think that is really interesting is like now that touring, and you can probably agree with this, but now that touring is like at the level that it is, and it's like been the only thing that I've done for like years now, I feel like when we get in those modes of talking about memories, you talk about the times that you were like broke in a van, sleeping on the floor. Like you never talk about like oh yeah, we loaded in at 2 and we just sat in the green room until set time. Like you talk about the time that like your van broke down. Like one time our van broke down and we just sat in a McDonald's for 3 days.
Nearly been going like 20 years, so it's like a fever dream.
Yeah.
Like someone will bring up a thing and you're like, I think so, and then it all starts to come back to you and you're like, whoa, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was mental. And it's like a different life.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
I can't imagine 20 years.
Yeah.
We're going on 10 years of being a band. I guess 8 years of touring. But like, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd still be like screaming, I would be like, no.
Yeah, that's why I want to start. Like, this is my job now.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely hard to pick like a particular moment, because I think like most of the moments we talk about are stuff that I would want to like just like crazy nights. Yeah, there's so many special moments and stuff. Like I love going to like places like Japan. I think that's for me when we get to go to countries like that I probably wouldn't have got to go to if it weren't for the fact that the band brought us there, and just like wild nights, and you know, in these kind of places that you have you kind of imagine what it would be like, and then you go to these places and you know, some places don't live up to that, and then there's places like Japan, or even places that kind of exceed your expectations, you know, like going to a place like Israel or Africa or something where you're like, I don't know what to expect, and then you go and it's like this incredible experience. I think that they'd be my favorite times. Kind of why we started the band, because we just wanted to like get to see the world more.
Yeah. Japan is my favorite place that I've ever been.
Same. It's my favorite place in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I like think about it every day.
Yeah. I've been on holiday there a couple of times, but yeah. And we were meant to be going like when the pandemic happened, so and it just kept going back every year, and now they're like next September, and we're like next September, so like why so long? Yeah, because we just love going there.
We were lucky enough to be there when things were shutting down, so we got to go right before touring went away. So it's like still pretty fresh in my memory, but yeah, I think about it every day.
Yeah. The thing is about America is it's such a big place. It's like, you know, it's like its own. It's like countries within a country. Do you know what I mean? So you can't really generalize that much. Go, yeah, all American crowds, because it's like we were just talking about now. Like the shows are good, but we feel like, you know, some people feel like as you go a bit more south, the crowd are a bit looser, and they like to have a bit more fun. You know, like New York or like places like East Coast or whatever have a different vibe, but then as well, like you go and play these places, and you know, we played New York, and for me, New York's always been like a kind of cool place, you know, where people are a bit more reserved. But I felt like the show was wild.
The show was good, but I completely agree. Like,
yeah,
I'm from Kentucky, so that's like the middle of nowhere. And growing up watching places like California and New York, they're spoiled. Like,
yeah,
dude, the night that we played New York, I think there was like 3 other massive shows.
Yeah, and there was like hip hop festival as well.
Yeah, Rolling Loud. And it's like they have so much stuff that's accessible to them just at their fingertips that like it's like, why would they pick you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a good show though.
Yeah, it was really awesome. Good. And yesterday as well, like where was
Atlanta.
It? Atlanta, and it was in an amphitheater, and I always dread amphitheaters.
Really?
Yeah, I just feel like concrete floor, like kind of a bit vibeless, and I always feel like the crowds never, and they don't. One thing in America is they don't like to pack them in the floor too much.
Yeah.
Like you could fit twice as many people on the floor usually. Like New York, I went round the back, and they're like, it's empty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was full. Like, it was fully sold, and so like sometimes, but yesterday was so sick.
Amphitheaters, I feel like we're pretty new to it, but so far I feel like it's like playing 2 shows, because you're playing to the people on the floor that are going crazy, but then you have to play to the people that are so far in the back.
You almost forget about them sometimes. Post COVID and lockdown, everyone's just like got this renewed sense of gratitude for getting to come to live concerts again. Do you know what I mean? And like definitely in England, and I feel it more here, like where someone like, oh, this place is not like usually that good for us, and it's been like twice as good as we remember. So I definitely feel whatever the vibe is, it's better than it's ever been, just because I think people are just so stoked to be back at shows again. We play a lot of festivals that are like we'll play like a metal festival that like Louder Than Life, but then in Europe and England we'll play like full on pop festivals as well, and that's like, you know, people that don't mosh and people it's not, and it's suddenly you've got to go, all right, how do I make this crowd, you know, vibe? Like, what do I do? Because I can't get them to all start moshing because they just don't know what that is. And it's just like, I enjoy that challenge of like, all right, how do I get this? How do I turn this into a good show? You know, and yeah, but it's definitely different. But but then it makes the headline shows easier. Do you know what I mean? You get into them, you're like, you can relax a bit. And so they're fun to do, and I think important to do.
I love that. That's something that I talk about a lot. And like you're the singer, I'm a singer, and it's like learning how to communicate to different crowds. Because like you can't play a pop festival and tell them to mosh, and like so it's like every crowd reacts differently, but in a lot of ways, we always joke and say that like if you don't tell them what to do, they'll do nothing.
Yeah.
So you like cracking the code of like figuring out what they respond to, and I love doing that. I love like being put in atmospheres that we don't necessarily fit in, and I feel like you guys are kind of like that as well because you have such an extensive catalog that you can kind of like bounce back and forth. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like I like to use like a lot of reverse psychology and kind of almost like distance out, but to the point before they start booing me, like fuck you. But if the mosh pit's not big, what's this? This is embarrassing. We just played so and so yesterday, and it was twice as big. And then before you know it, like they're like, no, come on, we got to get it bigger and stuff. It's just like figuring out that like sweet spot before they go like, no, fuck you, like. And so it is fun. It's also, I think, a new thing as well is like how we used to gauge how good a show was based on how big the pit was.
Yeah.
Whereas now I feel like in light of like, you know, what happened at Astro World and, you know, just in general, like being a little more cautious of like people getting hurt. You know, we've had to stop the show twice so far because we're like, you know, we want to make sure that no one gets hurt and stuff. And it's all, and in that as well, it's almost like, you know, I used to be like, fucking kill each other, rip each other's heads off and stuff. And now I'm a bit like, right, if someone did get hurt and then there's like a video of me saying shit like that, what's going to happen? Do you know what I mean? So like, it's also like trying to, you know, trying to make sure you're not just like fully inciting the crowd to like a violent degree, but you're making sure everyone's safe and having fun as well.
Also, something that I think is super interesting, I had to like take a step back and look at this from a different, like through a different lens. And it goes even more so for you all, but like we did our last headliner tour, we had like LED walls and stuff. And there were some nights when I was just like, they didn't seem into it. And our guitar player was like, we're now providing like a visual experience. Like some people aren't going to respond by like moshing and crowd surfing because they're just sitting there in awe of like what you guys are
they're
doing.
watching a show.
Yeah, and your all show is like so exciting that there's probably people that are just sitting there taking it all in.
I totally know what you're saying. It took me ages anyway to get for that transition when we first got more into production, started doing that. It's like the better your show is visually, the worse it feels on stage because the brighter it is, the less like, you know, you're less shrouded in darkness and like it feels less, for you, it feels less vibe because the show's pumping out all this light. You're like fully, and you can see everyone. And a lot of time people just like stood there like that and it's like they look bored. And you're like, fuck. At first I remember thinking, man, these shows suck. And then after people come out, like that was unreal. Like I was just like in a trance watching the show and stuff. And like, oh, now, and it's like realizing I've got to gauge not just on how big the mosh pits are, how much people are jumping, but how much people are singing along, how much people are, you know, just watching and taking it all in, and also like feedback and stuff. So it's very much different to when we first started.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those things. It's like the safety of like our fans and just in general. Like I think just in terms of just respect, do you know what I mean? It's like even if there was a chance we could play, there's like people having to evacuate their homes. There's like serious shit going on all around that, you know, all around Florida. It's like, is it really like, is that show so important that we're gonna like put people in danger just to come to it? Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, we didn't have a choice anyway. It's the promoters that kind of called us to shit, like made this decision anyway. But at the end of the day, I think like, you know, I think that's one thing that the pandemic and everything taught us. You know, we we before that we weren't really ever that aware or wondering should we do this. We were just like, can we do this? If we can, we'll do it. But sometimes I think now you look at things a bit different. Like, well, we could do it. It's like someone got injured the other day at one of our shows, and it's like, and we're like, we could finish our set, but is that really like the most, you know, is that the nice thing to do when someone's hurt themselves to a degree where an ambulance has had to come in and get them? We're just going to start playing on just to finish a song or two. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think it's like so important to think about those things, and think about what effect it would have on the people that are, you know, either your fans or just watching. Do you know what I mean? I think it's important that we set a good example with this stuff. Do you know what I mean? Not just in these kind of like, what would you call it, like act of God situations, but also like in a political sense, or, you know, like going to a country that's, you know, supporting something that's clearly wrong, or going through something, and just by going there, you know, like going and playing a show in Russia if it was possible. No way, just because of, you know, because for me that would be like you're in some way supporting what's going on there, or do you know what I mean? And I think as a band you've got to use whatever little power it is to like, and your voice to make a statement. So I think it's, you know, I think it's that comes before, like, it's a show at the end of the day, we're going to reschedule and we'll do it again and it'll be fine. But I think, yeah, safety and like actually having a bit of empathy for like fellow people is the most important thing.
And I mean, obviously we had nothing to do with the decision, but to add to what he's saying, I feel like people really respond well to that because they feel like at the level of touring that we're at, there's this huge divide between like band and crowd. And I feel like where you all come from and where we come from, we always want to shorten that gap as much as possible. Like, we're not celebrities, you know what I mean? And I feel like when you do something like stop your show to make sure somebody in your crowd is safe, the people really remember those things. And I feel like it helps a lot with shortening that gap of like, you're not just up there to do what you're doing it with the crowd.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people that as well. Like, the crowd is just as much as, like, the crowd is the most important part of these concerts. Like, we couldn't do it without the crowd. So like I feel like it makes the crowd feel really involved when they have the power to stop something to make sure that people are safe. And it goes a long way. I feel like people will remember that way more than if you just ignored it, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I will say, from a fan's perspective, the show is amazing. I've gotten to like watch them, and like what they've put together is like just so like entertaining to watch. I feel like it could really win over people that are here not even to see the show. If they're taking their kids or something, it's entertaining for everybody. So from taking myself out of the equation of playing, I mean, it's just a very exciting show that I think people are going to talk about for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's I think also, if you are on the fence and maybe that because you're someone who's just found out about our bands or just getting into rock music and maybe that's your first show or whatever, I think it's just such a good lineup in terms of like, it's a very diverse lineup. You know, we've got artists from all spectrums of like the alternative scene, and I think that's a really nice thing. It's not like an overwhelming like, okay, I like this band, but like I'm not sure about like any other band, so what do I do? It's got this kind of variety, and I think it's you know, whether you want to stand in the back and watch the show or get involved in the pit or whatever, it's like there's kind of like space for everyone to be here. And I think we're seeing that a lot as well, the like diversity of the kids from like much older people and stuff. It's wild. So yeah, it's a real fun, wholesome time, I think.
Mixed bills are the best.
Yeah.
I never like want to do a tour again where it's just 4 breakdown bands. It's just like, mixed bills are where it's at. People need to catch on it. There's something for literally everyone. This is like our 4th mixed bill tour of the year, and I've just been loving it.